Yesterday, my colleague Isaac and I went out by motorcycle in order to try to visit some of our partner pastors who have been affected by Cyclone Freddy and the flooding and landslides that resulted from that cyclone. So we set out pretty early from Zomba and we met up with Pastor Gulai, who is one of the pastors who helps us coordinate one of the regions where our churches are. And after a little bit of a delay because of a flat tire that had to be fixed, and then waiting in a long line for fuel because of fuel shortages, we finally set out, and we set out towards a pastor named Pastor Lenard. It took us a long time, a lot longer to get there because the roads had been so destroyed. Parts of the roads were still underwater. And it was just a very difficult journey. It was a journey that we had to make by motorcycle, even though, we have four-wheel drive Land Cruisers and things. It would have been very difficult for us to get there on anything other than a motorcycle. It was difficult to get there by motorcycle. When we showed up at Pastor Lenard's church, we were surprised to see so many people gathered at the church. What Pastor Lenard told us was that his church had become a ad hoc camp for several people who have lost their homes, who were staying in the church building, even though the church building itself had lost one of its walls during the storm. It was also a place where the government was bringing some food and dropping it off, and people, whether they lost their homes or not, were able to get some of the distributions that were coming by the government. Pastor Lenard told us that at his particular location, the water got up to about a meter high, and it was rushing through their area. In fact, one young man who lived a couple of doors down from the church was sadly washed away and died. Pastor Lenard had a strong house, and so it's still there. Many of his neighbors' houses are gone. We saw people living in structures that they were making from tree limbs and bamboo. They were sometimes using their old tin roofs to make the walls and the roof of these temporary shelters. Some who didn't have tin roofs before were using sacks that we used to store maize in. And they were using those sacks to make the walls and the roof of these temporary shelters. We passed by several school buildings that had many people staying in them as well. We had wanted to go even further down the road from Pastor Lenard and visit some churches that come closer to the Lacangala River and closer to Lake Chiwa. We knew that those churches especially were very, very seriously affected, but we were warned that we could not proceed down the road any further, that it was still underwater, that there was no good way or safe way for us to get to where we wanted to go. So we had to turn back and begin the journey back. And as we were going back, we just so happened to meet another one of our pastors, Pastor Nelson, on the road, and we asked Pastor Nelson how he was. His home was standing, but his church building was gone, so it was just a few hundred yards off of the road. So we went with him, and we saw the church building. The church building had disintegrated in the heavy rains down to the foundation. They were making a temporary shelter for their church out of bamboo and grass. But it was a great loss to this church and many of the other churches who have a similar story to tell, because like so many of us who have invested whether our labor or our money into our own church buildings. Represents a lot of work, a lot of money that the church saved up to build these buildings, and now all of that investment, sacrificial giving, whether through labor or through financial giving, is gone. And it's a great discouragement for pastors like Pastor Nelson. We're thankful they have their lives. We're thankful Pastor Nelson has a home. But it still is not an easy thing to process. The other thing we noticed driving along was the terrible condition of the crops. A lot of the maize, which should be growing to maturity right now, it's a few weeks away from what should be harvest. It had been washed away or blown down. It was already stunted because of the fertilizer, the lack of fertilizer that we have globally because of the Russia-Ukraine war. So there's going to be a lot of problems with hunger, with supplies, with feeding people. We are still in the process of praying for the Lord's leadership. This was part of us going out prayerfully and praying with pastors, talking to them, seeing what the real needs are. And we're thankful for those of you who have started to go on this journey with us by giving and by prayer. And we're going to just keep you updated throughout the process as to what the Lord shows us, how the Holy Spirit guides us, and how we respond to these disasters. But right now, just continue to pray. You can pray specifically for Pastor Lenard and Pastor Nelson. There are many others, but now you know a little bit about their stories.